Welcome back to our channel, where we unveil the most captivating true crime tales from across the globe. Today, we're exploring a tragic and heart-wrenching cold cases that remained unsolved for 50 years. In 1972, Julie Ann Hanson was a 15-year-old student at Naperville North High School in Naperville, Illinois. She was active in the school band, taught Sunday school, and sang in the choir. On July 7, 1972, she borrowed her brother's bicycle to attend a baseball game. When she didn't return, her family reported her missing. Police and local volunteers launched a search and soon found the abandoned bicycle on a gravel road near Knocknalls Road. Tragically, the next day, her body was discovered in a cornfield near Modest Road and 87th Street. She had been sexually assaulted and stabbed multiple times. Over the next 49 years, various persons of interest emerged but were gradually ruled out. In December 1996, Major Morris was considered a suspect in Julie Ann Hanson's murder. Morris had murdered 16-year-old Bobby Jean Anderson in 1973 in a similar manner to Julie. At the time of the murder, Morris was a teenager working as a trash collector and suspiciously moved away just days after Bobby's body was found. He was arrested 23 years later and confessed to the killing. However, he was never charged with the murder of Julie Hanson. In 1978, Margaret Stern went missing after attempting to hitchhike home from work. Morris was later charged with her murder and eventually confessed. The bodies of both his victims were found near the location where Julie Ann Hanson's body was discovered in 1972. However, Morris was not Julie's killer. In 2020, American serial killer Bruce Lindahl was also ruled out as a suspect. Lindahl murdered a 16-year-old girl in DuPage County in 1976 and was a suspect in a dozen other murders committed in the 70s and 80s. He died in 1981 when he accidentally stabbed himself in the thigh while killing a teenage boy in his apartment. The injury was fatal, causing him to quickly bleed to death. Lindahl was active during the time of Julie's murder, lived in Illinois, and his DNA was tested against that found at Julie's crime scene, but it did not match, officially ruling him out as her killer. In June 2021, 49 years after Julie Ann Hanson's murder, retired welder Barry Lee Whelpley was identified and charged with her murder. At the time of the crime, he was in his late 20s and lived less than a mile from Julie. The breakthrough came through genetic genealogy. A relative of Whelpley used a commercial DNA service to explore their family history, which linked him to a small DNA sample from the crime scene. Detectives constructed a family tree that eventually led them to Barry, who has pleaded not guilty. He was held in Ramsey County Jail on a $10 million bond before being extradited to Illinois to stand trial for first-degree murder. While Julie's parents are no longer alive, her brother and sister expressed their gratitude in a written statement. In 1974, Siobhan McGuinness was a lively 5-year-old girl with a beautiful smile she was never shy to show. Tragically, her life was violently taken and it would take 46 years to identify her killer. On February 5, 1974, while walking home from a friend's house in Missoula, Montana, she suddenly vanished. 2 days later, her body was discovered in a snow-covered ditch near an exit miles from her home. She had been sexually assaulted, sustained head trauma, and had also been stabbed. In the 1970s and early 1980s, Missoula was a known area for serial killer Wayne Nance, leading many to suspect him in Siobhan McGuinness's murder. However, DNA evidence eventually ruled him out, leaving the case cold for decades. After 46 years, in October 2020, detectives from the Missoula Police Department and other agencies identified her killer through DNA left at the crime scene. Specialists at Orthram Incorporated, a private technology company, created a genealogical profile of the suspect after a relative submitted a DNA sample using a home kit. This process led them to Richard William Davis. Davis was 32 years old and travelling through the area at the time of Siobhan McGuinness's murder. He had no criminal record and was described as a family man. However, he never faced justice for his crime as he passed away in 2012. Strangely, his obituary described him as a born-again Christian, a loving husband, father and grandfather who would be dearly missed. He enjoyed the outdoors and loved caring for animals. He left behind a wife and 4 daughters. Davis moved frequently, living in various states, including Arkansas, where he died at the age of 70 in 2012. He travelled cross-country from New York to Alaska, but primarily resided in Pennsylvania, South Dakota, New York, and Arkansas. He was also linked to the 1973 attempted kidnapping of an 8-year-old girl in New York. Authorities are unsure why Davis was in Missoula, but managed to locate a car matching the vehicle witnesses reported seeing him drive in 1974. Siobhan's father, Stephen McGuinness, and her half-sister, Una McGuinness, were amazed and relieved when the announcement was made. They noted that the killer's family members were very kind people. Una mentioned, "They sent us a very lovely statement from their family to ours, and they are also experiencing their own new family tragedy." Her father believed all along that the killer was a random person, not connected to their family. Davis held various jobs throughout his life, including working as a missionary on the Sioux Reservation in the early 1960s. Davis also worked in various roles throughout his life, including in the mines in South Dakota in the late 1960s, as a security guard at a wine bar in Bath, New York in the mid-70s, and as a school bus driver in Alaska from late 1974 to early 1975. He was a security guard at the Arkansas School for the Deaf and Blind in the 1970s or 1980s, and worked as a truck driver in the early 2000s. Additionally, Davis volunteered with Big Brothers Big Sisters in Arkansas during the late 1970s or 1980s. He drove several vehicles, including a Nash Rambler in the late 1960s, an Oldsmobile 98 in the early 1970s, a blue pickup truck in the late 1970s to 1980s, and a truck with a sleeper cab in the early 2000s. Davis also used 3 aliases: Dick, Nash, and William Davis. Investigators are still examining similar cases to determine if Davis may have been responsible for other crimes. Additionally, the Q Crime channel offers numerous other captivating cases for you to explore. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated with Q Crime Story videos every day. Farewell for now, and we eagerly anticipate your presence in our future videos.